Good morning, everybody, from the Independent Institute here in Oakland, California. This morning, we're going to talk about Love Gov, the Blockbuster video series that millennials love. We're here coming to you from our headquarters across the bay from San Francisco, and this is our Lighthouse briefing call, to which we welcome our many friends and supporters around the United States. We are so grateful to the members of our Lighthouse Society for making everything we do possible, including this remarkable series, Love Gov. We're going to talk about it today with the creators and instigators of this project, David Theroux, Mary Theroux. Welcome, David, Mary.
Thank you. Good morning.
And I think everybody on this call probably knows that David Theroux started the Independent Institute some 34 years ago and still leads us. Mary Theroux is our senior vice president. And they have been partners in crime, so to speak, for many years here at the Independent Institute, including on this remarkable project. I mean, this is a project with John Stossel loved. He said, we need to break up with big government, according to John Stossel. That's what he said after he saw this amazing video series. And how many views has this series had so far, David?
We're just over 31.5 million combined views.
Good gracious. Well, when I first saw the John Stossel quote, he was impressed by how much viewership was getting when it had 2 million views, and now It has 31 million views. So well, my thought is, before we get started in talking about how this came about and what went into it and the genius behind it, why don't we take a quick look with our friends here at the trailer or the teaser. It really runs just 1 minute. It's super short, but just as a reminder of what Love Gov looks and feels like. Okay, so let's run that clip.
I love small business. Not as much as big business, but still. I mean, I really want to make the world a better place. Well, just not Iran. So sorry.
Thanks.
Gov. Scott Kavinsky. That's who I am. Have you thought of studying abroad?
You don't have the money for this. Seemed like he knew everything.
And how is the patient doing this morning? It's on a wetlands. I mean, we're gonna have this bulldozed. Pee into this. Businesses are dangerous. I mean, I'm talking marijuana level dangerous.
It's a dumb.
It's perfect! Wear a helmet.
My mom says I don't have to.
Well, your mom sounds like a real idiot.
This has to be my second or third worst breakup.
Okay, I think we've got the feel for it. It always gives me a laugh when I see she's dropping her books. It's like the classic boy meets girl thing, but then the boy meets girl thing goes so wrong, and he turns out to be terribly controlling. And lo and behold, his nickname is Gov. So can you tell us a little bit about how Love Gov came into being? Like, the Independent Institute is known for our rigorous research, books and publications, most of them peer-reviewed. And yet, here's this unprecedented video series, which is satirical, a really different genre. What led to this, David?
Well, we always are looking for ways to extend our reach based on the books and other studies that we do in the media and using multimedia and so on. And the story in a nutshell is that millennials, which is the largest generation in American history, about 83 million Americans, had voted overwhelmingly both times for Obama or had not voted. And they'd been taught pretty much the government's going to take care of them. So Obama was their guy. And the Democrats thought they had this generation in their hip pocket, would keep voting them in office and so on, and they could expand government power and cater to all the interest groups that they cater to. So their interest was, let's lock this in. And the way they're going to lock this loyalty in by millennials was to get them to enroll in Obamacare. But something happened on the way which they didn't expect. And what happened was the Obamacare website didn't work. This was in October.
I remember. Everyone was so upset about that. They thought it was going to be like their great thing, and then the tech failed, of all things.
Right. So this is October 2013. And a lot of these kids tried to enroll. Many of them are tech savvy themselves, and they couldn't. The site didn't work for weeks, months. It really still doesn't work. And the response of the millennials was, you want me to trust you with my health care and you can't even set up a website to put my name in? Forget it. And so Harvard Institute of Politics and the Pew Research Center and others that track the views of millennials all show then that the confidence that millennials had in Obama, Obamacare, and Washington crashed that month. As a result, they started asking good questions. In other words, if they couldn't count on Washington to take care of them, how are they going to pay off their student loan debt? Mm-hmm. How are they going to afford a house? How can they get a good job? How can they afford health care? And then that next December 2013, the revelations became more public about the NSA spying on their cell phone. And so the question was, well, I'm texting my girlfriend at Starbucks, and that's going into some database. What's that about? Mm-hmm. So they were asking 5 good questions. They were alienated, lost trust in Washington. So we said, wow, this is an amazing situation. The problem was for them, they had no idea what the answers were. They had no idea where to go to get the answers. They don't watch the 6 o'clock news. They don't read the newspaper.
Right. The millennials just don't seem to follow the news the way other generations did.
Right. And so they get their news and entertainment primarily by going to YouTube virtually every day. And so we looked into the idea, could we take the studies that we've done on housing and healthcare and so on, could we create a series that would answer these questions, but you couldn't do it in a heavy-handed way. You couldn't be preaching to them. I mean, there are a number of different really good video series that you can see on different issues, but most of them have somebody standing there telling you what to think. And millennials would just click away.
Yeah, just talking heads.
Right. So what we decided to do was a series that would take advantage of the fact that this is the dating age. And we worked with a firm in Austin run by John Popola and his wife, Lisa. It was Lisa's idea, actually, for the basic context, which is, as what you mentioned, Graham, a boy meets girl love story. This is the dating age.
Everybody loves that.
Right. And it's far easier for people to understand if a friend or a boyfriend or a relative is misbehaving than some impersonal bureaucrat far away in Washington or Sacramento or Albany or whatever. So that's where it came from. And so the series, the first season is 5 episodes. Each episode deals with one of the 5 questions, but it has to flow smoothly as a story. And each episode is only 5 minutes.
Right.
So the challenge to us was, how do you convert the information in a book that we did on housing, say, into 5 minutes, but not being preachy? It has to flow with the story.
Yeah, what a challenge.
So that was the genesis of it.
And then also we saw studies that show that the best way to get people to change their mind is through humor. So people, it gets their defenses down and they kind of open their minds. So that was the idea. So we, as David mentioned, we sent out a request for proposals to several video production companies. And as he mentioned, Emerge and Order came back with this concept that we just loved. And it was a great process of working with them.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. It must have been a lot of fun. Let me just pause for a reminder to our participants that in a short while here, we're going to open up the floor to questions or comments from those of us joining us on the call. There'll be 3 ways to do that when the time comes, but be thinking about it. You can go over to your participant panel and raise your hand in the Zoom box, and I'll see that and I'll let you talk. Or you can put a Q&A in the Q&A box that is part of Zoom. Also, you can send a question to questions@independent.org. So we'll be coming up to you folks just shortly. But, listening to the 2 of you talk about Love Gov, the 2 things that are like deadly to millennials are something like if the tech doesn't work, then it's lame. And something that's lame, that's deadly. And then worst of all, you're spying on me. So on the spying part, let's take a quick look at this one little clip that illustrates that theme from Love Gov, where government is spying on us. Okay, let's take a look at that clip.
I would never spy on you. This is exactly what you said when you were alone in your bathroom on January 17th, 6:18 p.m.
Ooh, what are you looking at?
I was trying to turn it when you went that way. And then we gotta coordinate this a little bit better.
These are my emails.
Don't freak out. I'm just scanning them for keywords.
What keywords?
Well, here's a list of them.
That's an English dictionary.
And I'm not even reading them, all right? I'm just analyzing the metadata.
Okay, that everybody's spooked by that, especially younger people. So you want to comment on that, Mary? What's this telling us here?
Well, so that's the wrap up of season 1 of Love Gov. As Alexis throughout the season Alexis is the main character, the girl, young woman, and as the series takes place over the 10 years of her relationship with Gov, and that's the end where she finally has had it. His spying on her is the last straw, and she leaves him. But we're left hanging because the question remains: can you really leave Gov?
Right.
And so we had aimed we're aiming in Love Gov again, as David mentioned, because our research had shown that there was a large segment of the millennials who had become disillusioned with Obama, but they'd become disillusioned with the status quo in general. So they weren't leaving Obama and going to the Republicans or leaving Obama and going to the Libertarians or something else. They were adrift.
Right.
And we saw that as a real opportunity to reach this huge segment, which we dubbed the movable middle, and to get them to consider that Gov is not their friend and consider that maybe their life would be better if he wasn't so involved in their lives. So we decided we needed to do season 2. We started thinking deeper about, okay, so there's this huge segment of the younger generations who are movable in their worldview. When are they best able to be reached, and how best reached? And so our research again showed that it's as they're entering the real world, so to speak, for the first time. When they're leaving school, they're setting up a household for the first time, they're getting their first job, and so on. And they tend to run smack dab into the dichotomy between what they've been taught in school about how the world works and how government is their savior in all things, and what they're actually experiencing. The barriers they're seeing: they're out of school, they have this huge debt, they're trying to find a place to live, and housing is not affordable because of housing regulations and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So with season 2, we brought in a cast of people who are these early careerists, exactly this age group. They're just entering the world, starting their first jobs, and so on. So again, as David mentioned, these are kids watching people like them going through experiences just as they are, and through humor and that empathetic process, they really get into it and they really start absorbing the message. We also thought it was very important. Again, season 1 ended uncertainly. Yes, she's trying to leave Gov.
Yeah, she kind of gets free from him, and
but
he's disappointed.
Really free?
He's disappointed, but
right. And so, since Independent is all about solutions-based work, we wanted in season 2 to show young people understanding, dawning, and then solving those barriers for themselves, and at the end, learning that they can better succeed through their own efforts through enterprise versus government Gov helping them. So that's how season 2 unfolded.
One thing I might mention is in season 1, Gov is essentially destroying the life of this young woman, and she has to learn what Gov is like. In the story, Alexis, the heroine, has a friend, Libby, who the two of them have started an online business and they're making money. Gov in the process destroys that, as well as Alexis' credit and so on and so forth. So at the end of the story, she's kicking him out of her life. As Mary said, it's not so clear whether she actually can. So in the second season, by the way, I should mention that when we were doing season 1, we would get all these inquiries from people asking, when is the new season starting?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these kids viewed this like Seinfeld or Friends or something.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But of course, this has, a serious message, even if it's a satire and it is funny. So in the second season, what we did is instead of being just one person that Gov is focusing on, essentially is a community. So we drop him into this mid-sized city, and he, being the government, passes housing and land use controls, which bids the price of housing up, restricts the supply and so on. And then he passes rent control, so there's no housing for young people. So he decides to go into the housing business, i.e. government housing. But he only allow people in the housing that agree to be totally dependent on him.
He forced them to give up their jobs so they could qualify for the housing.
Right. It is funny, but the kids think they have this great deal. So they have to learn in the series of episodes, again, 5 episodes, based on the 5 questions that we talked about before. And they have to learn what Gov really is about. He's duplicitous, he's invasive, all this kind of thing, irrational. And then they have to transcend him. And that's what happens.
Let's take a peek at season 2. You saw some of season 1. Let's take a little peek at season 2 and some of the challenges that they have faced. It's kind of toward the end, I think. Let's play that clip.
Looking back, I can't see a single thing that I do differently. I saw a group of people who were weak, desperate, helpless, and I felt moved to help them. When they turned on me, I reached deep down inside myself and found the strength to give them exactly what they needed, good and hard. But like they say, no good deed goes unpunished. My real fear is that one day they're going to realize how good they had it and be devastated.
I'm sorry, are you in line?
I invented lines.
What?
No, I'm just trying to ascertain the legality of this establishment.
Seems legal to me.
For now.
Okay, I think we're getting the point here. Gov is watching, and if things aren't what he likes, then he declares them illegal. And he loves lines. They kept encountering his, throw up obstacles to everything they tried to do along the way. One of my favorite scenes personally, we didn't show it here today, but is when, which girl is it? She opens the hair salon in the kitchen.
Katie.
Katie.
Right. And then Gov, of course, finds out about it. And then next thing you know, there's a SWAT team coming in and closing him down with guns and so forth. And I think it was a no-knock entrance, too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely.
Tipped off.
Serious problems here that the SWAT team
Right.
has to deal with.
Gov tips off the SWAT team to bring social justice.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it's touches like that throughout. I think that, but it's amazing the content,
Yeah.
the content that's conveyed. But there's also a lot of humor, and there's a lot of those touches like that with the SWAT team. And
Well,
actually, they wanted to have a tank, but they apparently couldn't get a tank. So
I noticed one little touch when the guy is driving the lift mobile. There seems to be a passenger in the back.
It's not Lyft, it's Ryder.
Oh, it's Ryder. Yeah, the lift equivalent, Ryder.
Yeah.
So he's driving, and the passenger in the back seat looked awfully familiar, David.
Yeah, I thought it was a very convincing performance.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it reminds me of how Alfred Hitchcock always put himself in a little cameo in his movies. So
That's right.
well, the other fun touch is the little boy in season 1 who's riding the scooter, and then the young man who's tapping Gov on the shoulder in the line at the end are John Papola's son, Mateo.
okay.
So he's in both seasons too.
Right.
And John Papola is the one who leads Emergent Order, which is the
Right.
company with which we partnered. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, pretty
And
remarkable.
it was his wife who came up with the Love Gov 1 concept of the boy meets girl. So
Right.
Right.
But also
very much a family affair, as is Independent.
One thing I might add real quick is part of the idea that John and I talked about originally was if this could catch on and we could build a fan base and it would have a significant impact on connecting with millennials and engaging them and educating them and inspiring them on the ideas of liberty. And we can talk about that a little bit later. Could we use the Gov character in other ways in popular culture? Could we create graphic novels? Could we do
Yeah, I'd love that.
have a show on Comedy Central or something? And so that's part of what is percolating to see, what all we can do with this to influence really the bulk of an entire generation, and also other generations like Gen Z and so on.
We have a couple of questions that I've received. I'm just going to toss a couple to you now and remind everyone that you can also speak your question live if you wish to, just by putting your raised hand thing in the box on Zoom, also typing me a Q&A. One of the questions we have is, why do you think the series is so successful?
Go ahead, Mary.
Two things. One is it's subtle. As David mentioned, it's not somebody trying to tell you, just convey information to you. It's funny. It moves very quickly. And then I think the other thing is it's young people watching other young people go through these experiences.
Right.
When we first released it, we were at a 3-day conference, and we rented for our booth like a 50-inch screen, and we looped it continuously for the whole 3 days. And I happened to be at the booth for most of the 3 days.
You must have memorized the script.
I had it virtually memorized by then,
Exactly.
but I was still laughing at the end. It holds up beautifully. But a young woman came up to me and she said, I'd really like this, except it's the story of my life. She was a young businesswoman operating out of her condo. She had one employee. Obamacare came in. She lost her health insurance. The only thing she could get was a bronze plan with a huge deductible. Her employee could get a silver plan because their income was less and could be subsidized. But she said, I'm 39 years old and I'm living like a college student because I'm just facing all these obstacles all the time, just like Alexis in Love Gov 1. So I think, it's entertaining, but it resonates.
Yeah,
One other aspects of this was that in reaching, these millions of young people and sort of catching their attention and challenging the narrative they've been taught, but in the process addressing the questions that they have and showing them how to resolve those. For the first season, we created an app that each episode then channels the viewer to. And the app is funny, but also has a lot of information about how much you're on the hook for the government. And also has the 5 videos and then many other things that you can dig as deep as you want. And then for the second season, we created a new website called Catalyst, which is also people are channeled to in each of the episodes. And you can dig as deep as you want there. And so the idea is to create a way for young people to engage these ideas further, to have a place they can go to every day, to see these ideas applied, and to share with other people. So we're trying to create a community within the popular culture with young people. And as you can see from the polls about millennials, for example, they've been miseducated. And this is a way to redirect them.
So one more little theme in it with a clip before we get to a few more questions. One of the things you've mentioned, and we've already noticed in the clips before, is that the series illustrates ways in which government personified, puts up obstacles toward their trying to support themselves. For one thing, you recall he incentivized them to quit their jobs. Well, they tried to overcome that. Let's play this clip, which I think is going to shed even more light on that theme.
Hey, Gov, you look happy.
I am happy. I spent the day observing Katie and Sam as they worked at their jobs, and I discovered something. They're both competent and professional.
That's good, Gov.
No, it's not. It means they'll never get caught. So I intervened.
Did you hear? All the rideshare companies are moving out of the city. Something about expensive new regulations on drivers?
Oh boy, tough break, bud. But sounds like it's for the public good.
This was you?
Aha. Rideshare companies shutting down. Mary, what do you think about that?
Well, again, as with all Independent Institute projects, it shows that Love Gov is evergreen. This has been a rolling problem across the country. In fact, Austin outlawed rideshare companies early. And California now has, with the passage of a little thing called AB 5, Assembly Bill 5, which came into effect January 1st of this year, has made it illegal to be an independent contractor in California, pretty much. And Uber and Lyft, especially, are under fire. They almost shut down a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
A court gave them a little reprieve while it moves
Last
through
minute.
the court system. But extremely relevant to everyday lives of all of us.
So
we're-
Independent sponsored an open letter signed by 153 economists and political scientists in California, different schools. We also filed an amicus brief on a court case Pacific Legal Foundation has filed to challenge this measure as being unconstitutional, which it is. But how do you, again, reach huge numbers of young people who are affected by such a ridiculous measure that says that freelancing and independent contracting and so on is illegal? So the Love Gov series touches on so many different issues like that. As Mary said, it's sort of an evergreen aspect. In this case, the gentleman who came had become independent contractor for this ride-sharing company, which we call Rider, and so he was out of work.
Yeah, wouldn't you know? Just like in California nowadays, at least that's the threat with this
Right.
AB5 law. And by the way, the case which David mentioned is before the Ninth Federal Circuit Court of Appeal. And since the makeup of that court has evolved a bit, there's a good chance that they will take it seriously at the very least. But this brings me to a question one of our participants has just sent me, which bears on some of this here. We have a friend, Terry, who's on the line. Hey, Terry. He wants to know about the key questions that millennials might have in this election year, and which kind of leads to the question, I guess, of how does the Love Gov address current concerns leading into this election among young people?
Well, we've tracked this, especially when when we started developing season 2, for example. So it turns out that the 5 questions are still the 5 biggest questions that millennials have, according to Pew
not
Research
surprising.
Center. Right. It's not to say there aren't other questions. There are other questions. There's, the issue of climate change and what have you, but they're way down the list compared to these because, as Mary said, these are early careerists now, and they're trying to make do, and they can't. And then you throw in the COVID-19 situation and so on and so forth, and this ridiculous measure in California. By the way, Joe Biden has said that if elected president, he's gonna ban independent contracting nationally.
Yeah,
and
just like
use
in California.
This measure in California as the model for it. So these are not trivial issues. So again, millennials are asking really the big questions. They just don't know what the answers are, and they may go off in different directions, whether it's Sanders or whoever. By the way, you may notice that Sanders has used many of these same issues to emphasize, free tuition, free health care, and so on and so forth. So that's the sort of the socialist statist answer, which is what Gov is about.
Thinking about the election coming up, the importance of Love Gov just seems to be highlighted. Looking back at the last election campaign, one of the big themes that one of the parties seemed to have was that their own kind of fanciful presentation of the life of Julia. Remember the life of Julia? Julie was the same millennial or early careerist, and her whole life was defined by how she was going to get benefits from government. She had no relationships, and she was just, everything the government was going to do for her. She seems like the antithesis of these aspiring entrepreneurs in Love Gov.
Yeah, we couldn't have come up with a better counterpoint to Love Gov if we tried. It was almost, it could also almost be used as a satire of a satire. But
yeah, exactly. And Love Gov is the answer to the life of Julia. So
exactly.
That's pretty good. I'm open for other questions from our participating friends. Remember, you can raise your hand and I can let you speak out loud. Let me just give another question that I've got also so far. Did Love Gov get the reaction you thought it would?
Far greater.
Yeah.
So when we launched Love Gov, we had a goal of having 1 million views in 6 weeks.
Well, we use a firm in Chicago that does YouTube advertising. So they would do all this A/B testing to determine keywords and what videos would be appropriate to place ads in YouTube. And they told us, once they had digested all this and assembled this plan, that they could guarantee 1 million views by Millennials within 6 weeks at the launch of season 1.
Mm-hmm.
But within 6 weeks, we had 1.5 million views.
Mm-hmm.
So they said not only had we hit the target, we had surpassed the target. It's sort of like Robin Hood shooting his arrow and it splits the previous arrow.
Yeah,
Exactly. That's the way they described our impact.
That's
and then
pretty
when
cool.
when John Stossel did his, you mentioned John Stossel, he devoted an entire program when he was on Fox Business to Love Gov, and that was a time at which it had achieved 2 million views, and he was very impressed by that. Couldn't believe that a YouTube series had gotten 2 million views, especially one with these themes. So to now have 31.5 million views and climbing,
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty
just shows
exciting.
it's resonating and reverberating and being passed around among the, and that, by the way, the views are by the targeted audience of young people.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
So
You can
this
be-
is very important impact, especially in this season. You were talking to me the other day, Mary, about a couple of things that you had experienced recently about the impact of Love Gov. You mentioned your nephew, I think.
So we were recently at a family reunion. So one of our nephews, who agrees with the views of the Independent Institute, and actually is one of our supporters, mentioned that he loves to use Love Gov. He sends it to friends of his who are flirting with socialism or other leftist ideas. And they'll watch it because it is entertaining, it's funny, and then it plants the seed with which he can have a substantive conversation with them. And I just thought that was terrific. And then the other thing I was telling you about, Graham, is we're currently hiring for an additional administrative assistant here, and I had a pre-screen telephone interview with a young woman, and in the course of which she mentioned that she likes comedy, and I said, well, you might be interested in seeing this video series of ours, Love Gov. So when she came in for an in-person interview the other day, she said she'd watched it and she thought it was, number one, really great production value and very good. But importantly, she said she really wished that she'd seen it when she's 30 years old. She wished she'd seen it when she was younger, because she studied economics and other things, but she never really understood how these issues all impact her life, and Love Gov really educated her on them. So
that's pretty
again,
remarkable.
it has an enormous amount of content considering how short it is, and that it's conveying everything humorously. It's really, you can learn quite a bit from it.
Another way to see the impact of Love Gov is we entered it into many film festivals around the country. And I think we're now up to 31 film awards and film laurels for it. So these are mainstream film festivals in Orlando and Charleston and Anaheim and other places. And so it's an opportunity. For people such as ourselves that want to influence the culture in a positive way for liberty, there are different things you might do to try and influence people, especially on a large scale. You could do phone drives and door-to-door campaigns and electoral politics and direct mail and what have you. But this particular project dwarfs all of them in cost. It costs us roughly 5 cents per view by millennial. So for every $50,000 that we invest in promoting Love Gov, we get another 1 million views. So that nothing compares to it, and the response rate, the engagement, which is one of the major ways you evaluate the impact of the series, is about 94%. So it's really a winning ticket, and we're thrilled and honored to be working with others to make it possible. We want to push it as far as we can.
Absolutely. So we've got quite a number of friends from around the country with us on this call right now. Key question: how can people help if they want to?
Well, they can help support the additional promotion of it. We also, as David mentioned, have an affiliated website called Catalyst, which helps inform and it's news and short pieces on news of the day, taking, again, these ideas and applying them to young people's lives. Independent does run very lean. I think we're the most efficient so-called think tank in the country. Currently, we're 85 cents of every dollar goes to programs. So we take every dollar we receive, we're very grateful for, and we deploy it extremely effectively and very efficiently.
In addition, of course, a really simple thing that you all can do is view Love Gov yourself. And once you familiarize yourself with it, do what Mary's nephew did, recommend it to your friends, send them a link. You can find a link off of our website. Do you know the web address off the top of your head, David? They want to watch it?
Well, you can just Google Love, Love, and then Gov, and you'll get the page.
You'll get it. Absolutely. Yeah. So watch it, refer it. We would be grateful for your continued support in making this happen. And you just never know what might be in the future for Love Gov. There might be some more to it in the days ahead.
Right. And to follow up on what both Graham and Mary have just said, also, many parents have used it, grandparents have used it, educators have used it, business leaders have used it for staff. Policymakers have used it to train their staffs.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because it's not an ordeal.
Yeah, exactly.
It's enjoyable and it flows very smoothly and people relate to it.
It's one of the few things that both a grandparent and his or her grandchild can both enjoy.
That's right. Exactly.
So it's wonderful. Okay, so this has been lovely, David and Mary. Thank you for telling us a bit about how Love Gov got going and where it's making an impact. Thank you for all you've done to make this a reality.
Thank you, Graham, and thank you to all our donors. We so much appreciate your support.
None of this is possible without you.
Yeah, so hang in there with us. And for all of you who are members of our Lighthouse Society and would like to become members, stand by for news about future episodes of this Lighthouse Briefing Call. And also, of course, we invite you to renew your support for Independent by going to our website, independent.org. And of course, there's a donate button at the top right. And we welcome your input and your friendship as well. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Graham.
Thank
Take
you.
care.